Hey everybody, welcome to another GMG review. Today I'm taking a look at Warhammer Underworlds Beastgrave, the newest incarnation of Games Workshop's tabletop kitchen table skirmish competitive miniature game. And this is Season 3 effectively of Warhammer Underworlds, and it has started the kickoff of the rotation where the universal cards from Season 1 will rotate out, and the most recent two seasons, so this is Nightvault and Beastgrave now, will remain in play. You can always use all the warbands, and all of their warband specific marked cards will always be in play in every rotation. But the universal cards that were in the two box sets and the edition previous will be basically the ones that are in play. Now some are generic, like hold objectives 1 through 5 are generic objectives. They're basically always going to be in the game, stuff like that. But some other things have rotated out, and you should check out the Warhammer Underworlds website if you want to see what's current and what's not when this gets released. So the box set contains 2 new warbands, the Wild Hunt and then Grashrack's Despoilers, Slaughter, something, Despoilers. Grashrack's do bad stuff. And it also moves a location from Shadespire, which is the realm of Shish in the realm of death, to the realm of Gur, the realm of beasts, and a whole new location, a giant mountain, which is called the Beastgrave. And it's full of like a network of tunnels made by something called the Silent Ones, maybe Age of Sigmar Tyranids, weird insectile things that may or may not still be in there, and also has giant piled treasures. There are 2 factions in the box set, of course. The Kurnothi, which are basically a sort of satyr, half sort of like mutated elven race, and the Beastmen, which are classic Warhammer-style Beastmen. And also some spoilers for some new races. There have already been pictures shown of the new Wolf Riders, some really cool goblins. But on top of that, there's also art in here for the really cool new Nurgle Blight Kings, as well as some other stuff as well. So, some ghouls too, some callouts and spoilers and stuff too for the actual like faction backgrounds for those factions. So really exciting new stuff. We're gonna take a look at the box set, and then I'm gonna sit down and we'll do the more traditional top-down view and take a look through the cards. And so here it is all laid out, our box set for Beastgrave and all of its cool contents. I've got the tokens and stuff all punched and put in a little organizer here. But we've got great new art for everything, 4 new boards, which are all, of course, reversible, and 2 new warbands. Here we've got Grashrack's Despoilers. Now, if you're excited about these paint jobs, you can check them out all this coming week. Mike from Epitech Studios did some tutorials on using contrast paints to get these guys done. I think they look really sharp. He did a second tutorial on touching up and kind of like enhancing contrast paint jobs, which you can see here on the Bestigor. And this is Draknar. He's really well done with some rust added and other various like little bits and bobs. But really sharp looking. You get 6 models in the warband, a Bestigor, a Shaman, and then 4 Ungors. Got a feeling these are going to be usable in Warcry at some point too, because the new Monsters and Mercenaries, of course, spoiling the fact that there's going to be some Beastmen coming for them in the future. Then over here, we've got Skaith's Wild Hunt. And as usually happens, we can expect that what happens in Warhammer Underworlds is mirroring what's happening in the future for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. We saw the 2nd edition Age of Sigmar box set mirroring Nightvault, so you had the Nighthaunt's Armory book not long after that, and of course all the new chamber stuff for the Stormcast Eternals too. So I would suspect if they're gonna spoil the Kurnothi here, which are the sort of wild elves, the elves that are kind of all half from the like beast and from the realm of Guerrilla, you can see they're like little hooves and stuff there, and we have a centaur and stuff. Then Army book's probably not far away for this faction, and the action's probably going to be taking place in Gur as well, as any smart marketing person will do proc tie-ins and plan for all these procs to go together. So wonderful miniatures. I painted these guys up from a brown base coat, and just traditional painting for these guys. Not a lot of, actually no contrast paints at all, just a brown spray primer, and then just highlights and washes and the usual stuff to get them all done. Super fun to paint, really enjoyed them. Love the bases, especially this guy who's jumping over a piece of wood sticking out of like a pool of water. Really dug the fact that there was like some neat different things than just rubble and leaves and things on the bases. And then we've got this is Lycaon, a little, it's called a Malkin. It's a little like, I don't know, a lion, mountain lion, cougar, something like that. And of course you can see here too, the natural sort of like effects on all the bases, the fact that they're not in some kind of like underground ghost temple, reflected on the boards themselves. These are all just like caves inside the giant walking mountain. that is the Beastgrave. Accessories also reflect this. There is a new thing in the accessories. You'll notice the wound tokens have a flip side. These are ritual markers. Ritual markers are used by mages very often to unleash certain effects. And Grashrak has a ritual ability, basically, that he gets to use, and also objectives he can score off it. And then, of course, themed objectives, too, that are all flip over to hazards. So you got your objectives, and then they can also be used as hazards if you need them to, which are pretty cool. You can see here, so all of these, like, little kind of insecty bits, that's reflective of the silent ones. So if you're thinking you might see some homages to Tyranids in here, there's lots of weird kind of bug-like stuff. And maybe some eggs. All kinds of weird things in the Beastgrave. And then we have our decks, and our decks, of course, are in the new format. If you haven't been following Warhammer community about this, you've done something really smart. So you have your starter deck, as usual, and it's got a ready-to-go, like, pre-packaged deck, and that's these cards right here. So 12 objectives, and then 20 upgrades and ploys, half and half, 10 and 10. But everything that's faction marked, rune marked with that faction from now on, is exactly a deck. There will be 20 upgrade and ploy cards, and then 12 objective cards that are your faction. So if you just want a quick way to build a deck basically for your faction, all you have to do is grab all the faction rune marked cards, give them a shuffle into your 2 piles for your power deck and your objective deck, and you are ready to play. I am so excited about that. I think it's such a smart way to go forward, and it's a really cool sort of like new sort of like standardized format for doing decks. And I think as the rotation basically for the new stuff cycles in and out, that's going to be handy going forward. It does mean the season 1 warbands are going to have a lot more cards, because they had like the leader card. There's a whole bunch of like things that Workshop tried with this game that will kind of expand the number of cards in those decks. But for these future ones going forward, it's going to make, I think, a lot easier to control the number of cards that are in play, and in sets in general. And then we've got all of our actual character cards for the elves, and they follow the exact same format. The extra card pile then will give you the stuff. So you've got some generic cards in here, and then the rest of the faction cards will be sitting in the extra card deck. Also got our rule book. Not much different as far as like rules wise, but you do get a ton of new background for what's going on in Gur, why the silent people are so weird and insect-like. Some callouts for the Grimwatch. This is the Ghoul Warband coming in the future, and Rippus Snarlfangs, which are the Wolf Riders, the Labyrinth below the mountain. The mountain like walks around. It's crazy. And then some tie-ins to the previous seasons with the Cataphrane Curse. I'm not going to go over this too much. I think you're going to have more fun reading it for yourselves, reading the background and stuff. But definitely a cool new setting for this to happen. The game itself, relatively unchanged, mostly just sort of like cleaning things up. The one thing I will call out is objective cards. And there are 3 new classifications of objective cards for when they're not scored immediately, or they're scored in a weird way. So surge cards are your score immediately cards now. And then with the surge keyword, when the thing happens, then you score, basically. Hybrid objective cards typically have 2 different conditions on them, separated by or, which means you can score them in multiple different ways. So either of which allows you to score them. And then hybrid objective cards may also be surge cards, so these can actually combine. And then finally, dual objective cards, separated by and, have more than one condition usually, and they're usually worth more glory as well. They're the ones that will give you extra points because they have usually more than one qualifier as to how they're going to get scored. Of course, the scatter rules are still in here, and the scatter template from the previous season, which is Night Vault. And here's some of our other variations for the boards. You can see all the other sides here. Actually, I think they're laid out here at the end. There they are. So yeah, Shrine of the Silent People, which is a weird like insect shrine covered in bones. The Wormgrave, which is like a giant dead dragon. The Abandoned Lair, where something was clearly living. And then the Living Rock that like walks around. All right, let's look at some cards. We're going to start with Nashrak's Despoilers. Now, Nashrak is a caster, actually the only caster in this box set. And he's got Gambit spells. I'm pretty sure the other ones don't. I think maybe I'll have to check. I don't think there's a caster in the other one. But he's a 1-die caster. His Obsidian Blade is actually no joke. It's 2 hammers with 2 damage. So even though he's a caster, he does do a little bit of fighting. And then his Inspire, which is the same Inspire for the whole warband, is if 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action. That means that the whole warband is going to Inspire at once. And warbands with little kill me guys, who are like 2 health, things like the Sepulchral Guard, or the Goblins, or even the, what's it called? The Khorne guys that were in the original Star set. Garrix Reavers. Anybody with easy to kill guys might be susceptible to these guys inspiring a bit more than others. And then he's got 4 hexes of movement, so he's fast, 1 dodge die, and 4 health points. Now at the start of the game, and whenever an enemy fighter is taken out of action, put a ritual counter on this card. Reaction, during a friendly fighter's attack action, before the attack roll, remove a ritual counter and they can re-roll any of the attack dice, sorry, any 1 attack dice during that attack roll. So he has a cool like support ability in addition to all of his normal spellcastery stuff. Now Inspired, he gains Cleave on his little obsidian blade. Basic stats stay the same, and the reaction for his ritual stays the same as well. Draknar, who's the big Bestigor in the box, he's pretty sweet as well. He has a 3 damage, 2 hammer, 1 hex range attack. He's got a shield instead of a dodge, and 3 hit points with a 4 square move. No extra special stuff, but when he inspires, he gains Cleave on his Ripper Axe, and it goes to 3 swords, which is statistically more likely than the 2 hammers. And that's really it. He's just a big mountain of strength. Now this guy's probably my favorite of all of the minions. Korsh the Sneak, he's got a short spear, which are 1 range, 2 swords, and 1 damage. So he's kind of a pusher. He won't really do a lot of like total damage, but he can push people out of place. But he hasn't, and he's got 2 hit points, 1 dodge, and 4 hex of movement. If this fighter is on an edge hex and has no move token, place them in any edge hex and give them a charge token. So they can just teleport to any other edge hex. Super handy for going deep on deployment. And then Inspired, he gains an extra die on his short spear, an extra dodge, and you give him a move hex, or move token instead of a charge token when he jumps around. So he can still take attack actions afterwards, which is really cool. He's a really cool, like, hunter piece, basically. Murgoth Halfhorn, he's got a short spear with 2 swords and 2 damage, a bit hittier. He inspires the same way as everyone else. 4 hex of movement, 1 dodge, and 3 damage. And then he goes to an extra attack die when he inspires. And that's basically it. He's just the biggest of the little guys. A Gnarl with his short bow. It's a 3 hex range, 2 swords, 1 damage. So again, I can push people about around at range, which is kind of handy. And then his Flint Axe has 2 swords and 1 damage. And then he is 4 hex of movement with a dodge and 2. And when he inspires, he gains an extra die on his Flint Axe, and that's basically it. That's all he gets. But then you have Ushgor, and he's really neat because he's the same kind of shooter, flint knife and short bow. So he has 2 swords at 1 damage on his bow, and then 2 swords at 1 damage on his flint knife. But when he inspires, he gets Ensnare on his bow, which means it can't be blocked by dodges. Which is really handy for those dodgy armies trying to get out of the way using the dodge symbol. So there's all the characters, so that'll put some stuff into sort of perspective, I guess, for the spoilers. And let's go through, we're gonna go through their faction-specific cards first, starting with the power deck. So let's look at the Gambit spells. So we have Devolve on Nashrak. And if you want, so that we had said this earlier, but if you want to just use a ready-to-go deck, just take all of the faction-specific cards from this deck, and you're ready to rock and roll. So you can consider this a deck build, basically, from now on, because all of the core Warband cards are going to make exactly 20 cards for power cards, and exactly 12 cards for objective cards. So Devolve Gambit spell requires an exclamation point. If cast, choose an enemy fighter within 4x of the caster. That fighter is dealt 1 damage, then push that fighter up to 1 hex. This must take them closer to the caster. So you can devolve and move people closer to you. It's like a drag spell almost. And does a little bit of damage too. Bestial Vigor requires I forget which one's channel, which one's, so I'm going to say a swirly, requires a swirly. If cast, friendly fighters have +2 move in the next activation. So you can go to move 6, which is bananas, on a move 4 warbands, like get really fast, super quick. And then Bull Charge, the first attack action made by a friendly fighter as part of a charge action. In the next activation has an innate automatic sword. So you get an automatic sword for all those that need swords. Skirmisher, reaction, play this after a friendly fighter's move action, not as part of a charge action. That fighter can make a range 3+ attack action. That's pretty cool. So you can shoot your bows, basically. Blood Taunt, choose a friendly fighter. They're dealt 1 damage, give them a guard token. +2 dice to the first attack action made by that fighter in the next activation. So you just during your opponent's turn, they cut themselves, and then they get a guard token, and then +2 dice to the first attack action made by that fighter. So that person goes on guard, and then, yeah, gets to go stab people. Vile Invaders, choose up to 2 friendly hunters and push them up 2 X's each, so not Nashrak or the Bestigor. Weighted numbers, +1 damage to the first attack action made by a friendly hunter, the next activation, if there are one or more friendly supporting hunters, which means that you're piling on ungors basically to get bonus damage. Those bows become pretty deadly actually. Braying Hatred, +1 damage to the first range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation, so you can go up to damage 3 on some of those spears. Berserk Bellow, choose an enemy fighter adjacent to a friendly fighter and push them up to 1 hex. And up to 1 additional hex for each wound they already have. So if they're already beat up, basically, they can be pushed even further. That's a cool push card, actually. Baying Anger, +1 dice to the first range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation. Did I not already see that? Is there 2 Braying Angers in here? Bull Charge, Devolve, Berserk Fury. For some reason, I feel like I just read that card, and like there was 2 in here. Blood Taunt, Skirmisher, Bull Charge, Devolve. Nope, guess not. Braying Anger it is. Blinding Attack. This one's pretty cool. This attack action has +1 damage when it targets an adjacent enemy fighter. So this is restricted to Ushkor, but he gets a 3 range, 3 dice, 1 damage, and you basically do it like to shoot somebody in the eye if they're adjacent. So you can shoot someone up close and do a 2 damage attack instead of 1. Korsh has Dogged Survivor, reaction after a attack action that targets this fighter and fails, push them up to 2. And this is the sneak, I think. Korsh is the sneak, yes. So this is the guy who's like sneaking in the back. So you can push him away basically if someone attacks him and misses. Endless Hatred, reaction. This is for Gnarl. Gnarl is the hunter with the short bow, the one without ensnare. Reaction after this fighter's attack action, then it takes an enemy fighter out of action. This fighter can make another attack action. You can only use reaction once per round. So if you kill somebody, you get even to fight again. Draknar or Murgoth can both get this, and it's +1 wound. So you're just heedless of pain. You become blood crazed, +1 damage. This fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack actions if this fighter has 1 or more wound tokens or is adjacent to a fighter that has 1 or more wound tokens. So it's a risk reward thing, and it's and/or. So if you're next to someone who's hurt, or like basically you're just capitalizing on having taken damage already, or if you're hurt yourself. Any of the hunters, any of the Ungors can have this. Cursed Flint, even the most masterfully wrought armor, crumples. It's a cleave arrow, basically. So it's the same arrow damage, but has cleave, so ignore shields. A Jabbing Spear, +1 range to this fighter's short spear attack action. So Murgoth and Korsh can both get this. They're both of the little Ungors with spears, and they can basically have two range spears, which is handy. Savage Bolt, this is a upgrade for just Felhuth, Natrak, so he can get an extra spell now. It requires a channel, it's 3 range, and it's 1 damage. Knockback 1 on a critical hit, this attack does a +1 damage. Restriction Felhuth. You can reroll, so Sorcerer's Trinket, you can reroll 1 dice in the casting roll each time this fighter attempts to cast a spell. This is Felhuth as well. That's pretty cool. Considering he's 1 dice when he starts off with, that's a handy one to get out fast because he's looking to basically roll that 1 dice and succeed. And then Trophy Taker, when this fighter's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action, gaining glory points. So Draknar can upgrade to be a glory hunter too, which is cool. So lots of risk management stuff there with taking damage to earn benefits. And let's look at their custom objective deck. So this is the objective deck that they all share, or it's their faction specific one. So Bestial Cunning, Surge means score right away. Score this immediately when you play your 3rd or subsequent Gambit in a single round. So if you throw a bunch of Gambits down, you can score that one immediately. Bloodshed, score this in the end phase if 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action. Score 2. Killing Blow, Surge, so score this immediately when a friendly fighter's attack action that targets a fighter that has no wound tokens takes them out of action. So if you just kill somebody with 1 hit, you can score glory fast. There's a lot of fast score glory here. Raiders, Surge, score this immediately after an activation if 3 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory. Easy to get that one. Storm the battlefield, score this in an end phase if there are 1 or more friendly fighters in each of the following: your territory, enemy territory, and no one's territory. You could double down on those, that's actually super handy. Taint of Ruin, score this in an end phase if your warband casts 2 or more spells in the preceding action phase. That's a bit harder to do, especially when you're uninspired because you're only rolling 1 die. Blood Ritual, score this in end phase if there are at least 2 or more ritual counters in your leader's fighter cards. That's handy. You start with 1 at the beginning of the game. If you kill 1 guy, you'll have that to score. Conqueror, scores in an end phase if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in enemy territory. Despoiler, score this immediately after an activation if your warband holds 3 or more objectives. So you can get that one mid-turn for 2. That's another handy one considering how fast you are. Proven superiority, duel. Score this in an end phase if any enemy leaders are out of action and your leader is not out of action. So you can score 2 if you kill an enemy leader and you don't die yourself. Stampede, Surge. Score this immediately when a third or subsequent fighter makes a charge action in the same phase. With the amount of bows you have and the fact you can charge with bows in this game, that is a legit way to get 1 glory real fast. And then Survival of the Fittest, duel. Score this in end phase if there are 1 or more surviving friendly fighters and 5 or more fighters are out of action. So you have to have at least 1 person alive and 5 or more people are dead. So this isn't that great because if you have warbands of 3 or 4 guys, you're not actually able to score it at all. But with this objective deck, you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 on the table, plus whatever you can potentially score off of killing your opponent. So there's a look at, that's all of the faction-specific stuff for Nashrak and Friends. They seem like a fast positioning, like disrupting, because they can do a lot of pushing. They have a lot of 3-inch range, a lot of potential to charge, which gives them a 9 hex threat, or sorry, if you get your ploy off a 9 hex threat, a 7 hex threat for most of them that have bows, with the ability to upgrade a spear too, that goes down to a 6 threat. So you've got a lot of ability to like make attack actions at range and kind of drive people off objectives and then position yourself. And some cool in-warband stuff too, like the teleporting Beastman, and of course the ability to support attack actions too to make your low dice stuff more accurate by using ritual counters. If the only reason to save ritual counters is to score that 1, if you don't have it in your hand, just blow through them and try and make those actions work. So let's move on to Skaith's Wild Hunt and talk about Skaith himself. You do have a mage. The horn guy's a mage. That makes sense. So you do have a mage in here. I just didn't see it on the leader, and so I thought it didn't exist for a minute. Skaith the Huntsman, Javelin of the Hunt, 3 hex, 2 hammers, 1 damage, kicking hooves, and that's 3 swords, 2 damage. So the Javelin's pretty cool, but it's actually thrown. It's a ranged fighter. He's got a fairly mediocre kicking hoof melee attack, but he's 5 hexes of movement, 1 shield, and 4 health. And then if this fighter is a charge token, they inspire. So you can completely control who inspires during this in this faction. Javelin of the Hunt. This fighter can only make a Javelin of the Hunt attack action once per game. It has +1 damage when made as part of a charge action. So you're only able to do that once, and then the rest of the time you're just kicking hooves. He's a weird fighter. But when he inspires after he charges, kicking hooves go to Scything, which is pretty neat. And I actually completely forget what Scything does. Let's look it up. That's a new keyword. Scything is attack action keyword. If the attack action is known as having the Scything, when the attack action is made, it can be used against each adjacent enemy fighter. So it's basically the guy with the chain axe from the first season. They've given it a keyword now as opposed to, it's an ability basically. And then he's 2 shields instead of 1, and Javelin of the Hunt's the same, +1 damage if it's part of a charge, but you're only getting it once. So he's interesting in that he's a bit pillow-fisted, but he gets to attack multiple guys, so he's good against hordes. And we have Carthaean Huntcaller, the Hunter. He's got a Wand of Kurnoth. Oh, it's not a mace, I thought it was a big mace. Yeah, I guess he's a mage. He has 2 hammers with 2 damage attack, and he also inspires in a charge. So 4 hexes of movement, 2 dodges instead of shields, and then 3 health. Hunting Horn action, put a horn counter in this card. When there's a horn counter in this card, reroll any number of dice in the next attack roll made for a friendly fighter's attack action, then remove the horn counter. And then the Wand of Kurnoth goes to 3 damage when he inspires, he makes a charge. He's got 2 casting instead of 1. And same Hunting Horn action, put a horn counter on this card. When there's a horn counter in this card, reroll any number of dice in the next attack action made for a friendly fighter, then remove the horn card. So he has to use his action to do it, so you're basically telegraphing your next attack. Shiok, the Kurnothi Tracker Hunter, and then they have a Shear. It's 2 hammers, 2 damage. Again, inspires by charging. 4 hexes, 1 dodge, and 3 life. And then when inspired, 5 hexes of movement. Everybody gets faster except for the Centaur. And then gains Cleave on the big sword. So 3 hammers and 2 damage with Cleave. You can reroll 1 dice in the defense roll when this fighter is the target of an attack action. So very, very dodgy when they inspire as well. And then you've got Althain, the Carnothi Tracker, with a Seeker Bow. So 3 hex range, 2 hammers for dice, 1 damage. 4 hex move, 1 dodge, 3 damage. And then Inspired gains Ensnare, so can't be blocked by dodges on the bow. 1 extra hex of movement, and you can reroll 1 dice in the defense roll and targeted by an attack action. So the elves become Dodger when they Inspire. And then Legaean, the Malkin, with Teeth and Claws, 2 swords, 1 damage. And then this fighter can upgrade by charging. This fighter cannot be given attack action upgrades and cannot hold objectives because it's an animal. But 5 hex of move, 1 dodge, 2 life. And then Inspires with Ensnare, so can't be dodged. 5 hex of movement, and then and 2 dodges. This fighter cannot be given attack action upgrades and cannot hold objectives. So you have a very interesting, fast, not particularly survivable elf faction here. So let's take a look at their power cards. All right. Binding Ward. So this is for your Hornblower. And with a blast of his horn, the air itself comes to Carthain's aid. It's a Gambit spell. It needs a swirly. If cast, choose an enemy fighter within 4 hexes. Give them a move token. We got Healing Breeze. Gambit spell. Needs a swirly. If cast, pick a hex within 4 hexes. Heal 1 to any fighters not hex and hexes adjacent. So you can heal clouds of people. Fleet of Foot. Choose a friendly fighter that has no move or charge tokens. They can take a move action, but that will give them a token because it is an action. Hunt in Concert. Choose up to 2 friendly fighters and push them each 1 hex. Another Gambit spell. Might of Kurnoth. Gambit spell needs a swirly, which I think is a channel. If cast, choose a friendly fighter. Their range 1 and range 2 attack actions have +1 damage. This spell persists until the end of the round or until that fighter's taken out of action. And then we're on to some actual ploys. This one's Skaith specific. Retrieve Javelin. Your leader is no longer considered to have made a Javelin hunt attack action, so you can throw your Javelin and get it back. Striking Concert. This fight has the first range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation has +1 damage for each friendly supporting fighter. So you're extra, I mean, you only have 5 people in the warbands, but being able to run the kitty up and then get extra damage, that's pretty cool. Seems like a lot of telegraphing though. Swift as the Wind, choose a friendly fighter that has 1 or more move tokens, remove a move token. Pounce, push a friendly fighter up to 3 hexes so that they're adjacent to an enemy fighter that has a 1 or more wound token. So lots of extra movement ploys here. Song of Swiftness, this is for Carthian with the caster. Friendly fighters have +1 move. This effect persists until the end of the round or until the friendly Carthian's taken out of action. So everyone goes to move like 5, 6, depending if they're inspired or not. Battle Cry, action, remove all guard tokens from adjacent enemy fighters. Push all adjacent enemy fighters 1 hex. You shout at them and scare them. I like the art on here as spoilers for some of the other factions too. That's clearly a Blight King. Divine Strength, the fighter's attack actions have knockback 1. Fast Shot, after this fighter's activation in which they made a range 3+ attack action, make another one, and this is for Althain only. Great Strides, these are all upgrades now. So that was Fast Shot was an upgrade, which means you get to shoot twice per turn. Divine Strength is knockback. Battle Cry is also an upgrade. +2 move, so you can be movement like bananas. Movement 7 inspired, movement 6 base. Hail Charm, this is for any of the hunters. So this is when a fighter's dealt damage, reduce the damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. Shield Slash, this is for Skaith only. An enemy offense becomes severely limited when their bones have been shattered. I like that quote. It's a 1 hex range, 2 hammers, does 3 damage. So you can, this is basically how you unpillow fist him. He gains a new attack action if you give him a Shield Slash, but you have to dig for this card to get it, and he gets a 3 damage attack. That's a big deal. It's weird that his good attack is buried in the deck. Upgrade for the Spellcaster, Vicious Darts. At Carthian's call, Motes of Life magic coalesce into barbed projectiles. So it doesn't snare. It's a 3 range, needs a channel, the swirly, and does 1 damage. On a critical hit, this attack does +1 damage. And any of the hunters, Eye of Kurnoth, this fighter's attack actions have +1 dice. If the target is Quarry, this attack action also has Ensnare. Let's look up Quarry. Quarry is LMNOP Q. There is no Quarry word in here. Maybe that's something else we can add on. If the enemy target is a Quarry, this fighter's attack actions have Ensnare. I don't see anything that makes something Quarry in here. Quarry, Quarry, Quarry. Reroll, charge action. Nope. Nope. Quarry. I have to find where that is. If the entered target is a quarry, this fighter's attack actions also have ensnare. Quarry is not, it's bolded like it's a universal term. Element OP, Q. No, it goes from push to range, which means I don't know what the quarry keyword means. It's not in the glossary. We'll have to look that one up later. It's a bonus effect though, whatever it is. And then Legion can have a hunting aspect. He gains +2 move, +1 defense, and +1 wounds. Holy moly, he turns into Battle Cat. He literally turns into Battle Cat. That's amazing. So he Battle Cats up from whatchamacallit, and he gets to be 7 move, 3 defense, and 3 wounds. That's amazing. Good job, He-Man. And then Kurnoth's Mark. This is restricted to any of the hunters. You can reroll 1 dice in defense when this fighter is the target of an attack action. Reaction, after a fighter's friendly attack action, the target takes an adjacent enemy fighter out of action. If this card's in your hand, give that friendly fighter this upgrade. Do not spend any glory points. That's pretty cool. So if you kill somebody, they can have this upgrade. Because they basically paint their faces in blood. I love it. That's really cool. And then let's take a look at our objectives. So, we got Aspect of Kurnoth. In Beastgrave, there's no end to the hunt. The hunt goes on forever. Scores an end phase of all surviving fighters are inspired. That's cool. Just inspire everybody. Gifts of Kurnoth. Scores an end phase of 3 or more surviving fighters. Each have 1 or more upgrades. Hunt's End Hybrid. Score this in an end phase if an enemy fighter has a wounds characteristic of 4 or more out of action, or your warband holds 3 or more objectives. So lots of ways to do that one. Run through Surge. Score this immediately if your leader takes an enemy fighter out of action, because you just stab somebody. Slay the Corrupted. Score this in an end phase if 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action. Soul Binding. Score this immediately when your warband casts a spell. That's an easy one. Cry of the Wild. Duel. Score this with an end phase if a friendly Carthian made the hunting horn action in the previous phase and survived. There's a friendly surviving Carthian. Kurnoth's Snare. Score this immediately when an enemy fighter is pushed into a lethal hex. That's awesome. There's a picture of the ghouls, actually. Purifying Rite. Score this in an end phase if your warband holds all objectives in 1 or more players' territories. Ritual Kill. Surge. Score this immediately when your warband takes an enemy fighter standing in the same hex as an objective out of action. Run Down. Surge. Scores immediately when a friendly fighter takes an enemy fighter out of action with an attack action made as part of a charge. And then Safety and Swiftness. Score an end phase if 3 or more surviving fighters each have 1 or more move and or charge tokens. So about killing things and staying alive and then killing the right things, which is a pretty apt deck, I would say. It's interesting that your leader's ability to become a heavy hitter is in the deck, though. So last but not least, we'll take a look at the universal cards. Now you get 2 sets of the universal cards, and they're identical. So because you're getting 2 factions here, you're basically your extra card decks come with 2 of these. I'm just going to go through one of them. And let's just divide them up into Gambits and other things. I think that was it. Yeah. So Gambits, Eldritch Haze. Gambit spell, and I think a channel. If cast, the caster has +1 defense. The spell persists until the end of the round or until the fighter is taken out of action. Confusion. Choose 2 fighters that are adjacent to each other. Place each fighter in the hex that was occupied by the other fighter when you chose them. So swap places. It's a classic. Sidestep. Choose a friendly fighter and push them. It's a classic. Snare. Reaction. Play this during a friendly hunter's attack action as it drives back an enemy fighter. The enemy fighter is dealt 1 damage. So what's interesting is Hunter is now a keyword, and everybody except for like Gayan has the Hunter keyword in here, and everybody except for the 2 big guys, Felhuth and Draknar. So Hunter's like a word across all of Beastgrave, basically. Caltrops, reaction during a range 1 attack action after this fighter is driven back, but before they're dealt damage by any lethal hexes, the attacker is dealt damage because you drop Caltrops on the way. Great Fortitude, +1 wound. Hey, it's a classic. Great Strength, +1 damage to range 1 and range 2 attack actions. And then the classic objectives, Annihilation, end phase if you killed everybody for 5. Hold 1, hold 2, hold 3, hold 4, hold 5. Supremacy, score this in end phase if your warband holds 3 or more. Denial, score this in the 3rd end phase if there's no enemy fighters in your territory. And Conquest, score in the 3rd and end phase if all surviving enemy fighters are in your, or friendly fighters are in your territory. And that's it. So there it is. So some classics back, some really familiar stuff from Season 1 and Season 2, and then 2 new warbands who, it's interesting, they have a lot of mobility play to them. There's a lot of range stuff, so being able to push and pull people with range attacks, which is very different from previous editions of Warhammer Underworlds, where there was a lot of just like one hex engagement melee combat. And the good mix of like magic. We have a magic user who's not the primary now, not the leader of the warband, which is really cool for the elves. And then we have some like sort of like blended big fighter / little fighter warbands as well, where you have mixed mobs of guys with multiple wounds and guys with 2 wounds. So I'm pretty excited. This is going to be a neat season. I am happy they're adopting sort of traditional competitive game, card game, tabletop game release plans and just things that have worked in the industry. So for instance, if you played any kind of competitive card games, having seasons that rotate in and out is just business as usual. So like having sets in play, having 2 sets in play, it's such a good way to get rid of the card bloat, cycle off stuff that doesn't work anymore. You can dump a season's universal cards and clean them up. You can see that they've done such a better job with creating new language here, things like Surge, things like ensnare, like having new keywords like ensnare, new traits, so that you don't have to have extra text on the card. You can just add to the glossary and have it make more sense. And then the and/or combo cards means less dead objective cards in your hand. One of the things that would very often happen in the last 2 seasons is you could have objective cards in your hand that were score one way and you never score them any other way. Having multiple scorings off a single objective card makes it far more likely you end up with less dead objective cards, less low glory games. More ways to score glory is good and makes the games more interesting, as it's a combination between killing your opponent and positioning to do things. So I think this is a really good, like, a really good example of applied learning in now the third year of releases for Warhammer Underworlds, and them taking the data they basically have now from doing grand clashes and all the feedback from players and stuff and applying it into the product design. And that's really encouraging. I've always thought that the team working on Warhammer Underworlds is probably one of the best currently designing at Games Workshop. They've been also responsible for a bunch of other great products they've made. But Underworlds, I think, continues to be sort of like their finest example of achievement of what you can do when you're making something new, but you're also making it to be durable and to last and to refresh itself on an ongoing cycle. And yes, for the cynical people out there, yes, that does mean basically making more money and they can continue to do releases and you have to continuously chase that wave. But that's the point of a business. I'd be bored. If a game doesn't have releases anymore, I'll stop playing it because there's nothing to keep me excited. I'm excited about the next thing that's coming out. And if they figure out a way of doing that, which is in a practical and convenient way where I can always know what sets are in play, I don't have to memorize a card library of 7 million things, then I'm entirely on board with that. I like the clear 2 sets in play. You can always play with your old warbands because their specific cards will be universal and be around forever, and you're not carrying around just an ever-expanding binder of cards. And also the game is, like, compared to most like tabletop miniature games, this is an incredibly affordable game. They've kept the component quality and the product quality super high. The new models are gorgeous, the new boards are gorgeous, and it's in a whole new place. Like, they've taken the best notes of things like Magic the Gathering, where they've got like a new place and a new storyline for every set of Magic cards, and they're applying that logic here. And also, I appreciate the fact that they littered this thing with sneak peeks probably into the next year's upcoming releases for Age of Sigmar, because these 2 things are hand in glove, and you know that some of the stuff that's in here is going to be Warband spoilers, so things like there's clearly Blight Kings. We've seen Rip of Snarlfangs, and we know that there's now some they think they're on a quest, Bretonnian ghouls, running around the Beastgrave being like, we're going to slay the beast and protect our local peasants from that. And the local peasants are all ghouls eating cannibals. And I think that's great. I think that they've done a really good job of sort of teasing all that stuff as well. So I'm excited about it. I'm going to play some games with Epic Duck Mike next week, and you'll be able to see those soon on the channel, and we'll give these guys a go. So I hope you enjoyed that review, taking a look at the 2 new warbands and all the cards. Until next time, I'm Ash. Stop working in. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to support the channel, of course, like and subscribe and hit the little bell below to get notifications when I post future content. I do post stuff 7 days a week. If you want to support the channel further, you can, of course, buy a t-shirt through Spreadshirts, buy a measuring gauge or objective markers from Death Ray Designs, or, of course, most importantly, there is Patreon. Patreon is what makes all this possible, keeps the lights on, pays for the studio costs, pays for the equipment, model costs, and everything else, and most importantly, puts food in my kids' bellies and a roof over their heads. Big thanks to everyone, past, future, who supported me. I do this stuff because of you guys, and of course, I will continue doing it as long as I can.